All right. So just to start, I just want to get your consent that you are okay with the recording of this mock interview, correct?
Yes, I fully agree with this recording and sharing it for educational purposes later.
Right. Thank you. I already introduced QA pillars in our previous meeting, so this is just to uh, simulate an actual technical interview so that we can practice our own answers for future job opportunities. Right. So also just to introduce myself, I'm Marj. I'm a software QA specialist based in the Philippines. So can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Andrii. I'm from Ukraine, and I worked in test automation for about last 12 years. Actually in QA, but mostly in test automation, specifically mostly with Java and a bit with JavaScript technology stack. Yeah, last 5 years, maybe even maybe more. I work in some kind of leadership position, but I'm kind of leading a team of another automation engineers. So yeah, that's briefly about me.
All right. And do you prefer Java as your language, or do you currently use anything else?
Well, as I mentioned, my primary expertise is Java. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm also interested with JavaScript or TypeScript because nowadays it becomes there is a high demand for this type of technology on the market. So we are interested in this as well. So I do have experience here as well.
All right. So first, can you describe your most recent project? Can you tell us your experience?
Yeah, well, the most recent project was related to the retail application, kind of internet shop, where you can order books. Yeah, so kind of standard project. Yes, so but there we did have kind of I had challenging task. So when I joined, project was already running for about more than 2 years, and they have created a lot of automation tests, and it actually becomes a bit of expensive in terms of supporting all of this. So I had to analyze their current strategy and solve this problem so that firstly execution time of those test cases is become lower and so that they run faster, and secondly that people QA automation people do not spend most of their time just analyzing failures or refactoring code. So yes, it's kind of
Okay, so that in that project, the automation scripts or the automation framework was already existing, correct?
yes, it was already existing, correct.
Okay, and what sort of improvements have you made in that in the process?
Mhm. So in the process, so a team focused on end-to-end test cases a lot. So it created a few thousands for them. So it was quite a big project. And the problem with end-to-end tests is that they are, the most expensive and the most they are slow. Yes, so that actually what was team faced with, and I was joined the team to resolve this problem. So and analyzing that, I suggested to split test coverage to different levels so that you create not only end-to-end test cases but also lower level tests like integration tests, component level tests. Yeah, and so in this case, you wanna find the right balance between end-to-end, so that you have not so big amount of them in your project, but focus more on lower level tests because they are faster, they are more reliable, so require less maintenance time. So in other words, less money. Yeah, yeah, for sure, end-to-end tests are the most reliable, but at the same time, they're most expensive. So, yeah, so I suggested to focus on that and introduce technical solutions to, achieve that. So, for example, like I introduced a Playwright framework with TypeScript, where we created, this component level test. So by component level test, I mean that we tested front end in isolation. Yeah, so that like we mocked backend there and like focused on front end functionality only for those types of tests. So it helped us to achieve such benefits as that tests were really quick. They like were focused on front end side only. So for example, if test fails, it means that you definitely have a bug on front end, right? So you don't need to analyze like, is it kind of a front end bug or back end bug or integration or whatever. So if this test fails, it's 100% front end bug. Yeah. So for sure, there is a disadvantage that like you can, you may have functionality working with mocked backend, but when you connect real backend, it will fail. Yeah, because like integration is also a crucial part. So also we did have integration tests, like for example, like if like if front end and the backend have some contract between them, like for example, front end sends like a REST request to get me user, yeah, and expects backend to return it, in format like username, last name, third name, yeah. And if tomorrow the format will be another one, so like front end will fail. And if you have only front end tests, like you will never know about this kind of issue. Only on production you will find out it. Yeah. So to avoid this, you need integration tests as well. So and yeah.
I see.
So I can continue for a long time. So interrupt me,
No, it's fine.
interrupt me to not.
So basically, they still kept their current framework and you introduce new tools. Is that it? Or
Yes,
did you?
we
Okay, sorry, go
So
ahead.
current solution was based on Cucumber. So for the end-to-end test, Cucumber is a good choice. Yeah, and we still left it. But still, yeah, we introduced another like framework for component level tests. Yeah, and so what we done is that we like just uh, um, updated our process so that we, smartly decide on which layer we need to automate this or that test. So for example, the most critical path, like user journeys, like the most critical functionality is like subject for end-to-end tests, definitely. But for example, if you have some functionality like front-end validation, like for example, when you type incorrect password, you have like error message on your UI. Yeah, so backend doesn't take part in this functionality, so you don't need backend and you don't need resources, to create end-to-end test for this simple functionality, but still important one. Yeah, so for these types of tests, you can definitely, create them on component level tests, and it's more efficient. Yeah.
All right, got it. Um, so in any of your project, did you have to build the framework from scratch?
Yes, many times, maybe 5 or 6.
All right. Maybe can you share your experience or how did you start building the framework? Like what were the criteria that you have to consider?
Mhm. Yeah, so before starting like creating test framework, you definitely need to analyze your project. Every project is unique. It like requires unique test strategy and tool selection, right? So before doing something, you need to analyze what you need to do and to find the best tools to work with. Like, so usually like this tool selection process is kind of consists of, you again define what you need, what you expect from the tool, and then you analyze like what you have on the like market, like uh, so, and the criteria usually is kind of price. So is it free or not free, this tool, framework or library, is it free or not free? Like if it is like not free, how the price, yeah. So does it this tool or framework has some support? Yeah, so it's this kind of good community. Like for example, is this tool already exists like for 10 years or it was just introduced like 2 months ago? It's a big different stories. So, for example, which features this tool framework has, like built-in one, what kind of experience your team has. Yeah, so like if your team already, experience with Java, well, you mostly will focus on Java solutions rather than considering JavaScript or something else, right? Uh, what your developers like which they technical stack they have, like, so firstly, like ideally technical stack for automation should be the same as developers have. It's not mandatory, but like the best scenario, because firstly developers can help you with some advices, and secondly at some point of time they can be also involved to test automation activities if needed. Yeah, so that's the main criteria for tool selection, not obviously all of them. I can continue if needed, but yeah. So the next step, like once you did research and selected the tool, you actually start creating framework, of course, with kind of POC, like proof of concept, where you trying it, you take your project and implement some basic stuff like a simple like 2 or 3 test cases here, and configure like everything like needed framework structure, like modules, like stuff like reporting, login, working with properties, so that for example, you can easily switch your test execution from test environment to stage environment, from stage to production, okay, pre-production, yeah. Just manipulating this properties file. Like the crucial moment is to define your test data strategy, because it's the most difficult and challenging part on every project. So it's kind of usually a challenge, and no silver bullet exists here. Any solution has its pros and cons, unfortunately. So that's on high level. Maybe you have some specific questions about how it should be done.
Yeah, it's good. Um, so when creating, you start by creating POC, right? So
Mhm.
how did you decide which test cases to automate? Are the manual test cases available, or
Yeah, ideal scenario if you have many scenarios available and you just choose them by priority. So, like ideally, many LQAs already prioritize them so that you start from the highest priority. Yeah. If it's not the case, well, the same should be done with user stories or like requirements. So at least on this level, they must be prioritized by product owner or business analyst or like whoever responsible for the product itself. Yes, so you can ask like those guy, what are our the main priority. Yeah. Again, if it's for some reason not the case, but I never faced this situation, yes, so you can like use your common sense and like obviously, for example, login functionality is important, and because it will be used by like every every user like every moment of time, so you can start from that.
okay? So in your, like for example, the project that you what do you call this? You explained earlier, where they
Mhm.
were using Cucumber. At what point do you decide, now that you are familiar with the tool, right? When do you decide to incorporate or integrate Cucumber in your test framework, or what would you consider it or not?
Well, as I mentioned, when I joined, it was already there, right?
Right.
But am I right that your question is like, is Cucumber a good choice or not, and when? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
If you're going to build a new
Yeah.
framework from
Mhm.
scratch.
Yeah, that's a good question. And like BD is kind of debatable topic, right? So there are some people who really likes it. There are some people who really hates it. I will try to be, be kind of like I'm not the person who, um, distinguish or like evaluates tool, but like by criteria that I like it, I or don't like because it's not professional. Yeah, so you should always consider like what your project needs or not or doesn't need. Yeah, and some projects they require BDD or Cucumber. Yeah, so usually is non-technical guys like managers, for example, or business analysts who are deeply. So do you hear me well? Because I see like internet connection not stable label.
Yeah, it's breaking a bit, but I can hear you now.
Mhm. Okay. So yeah, so BDD is good. Cucumber good choice when you have these people like managers or business analysts who are, or maybe functional QAs who are deeply involved in test creation. And well, as like automation guys, mostly focus on automating those, Gherkin steps like given when then. Yeah. So, but if like automation engineers are responsible, for designing test cases and automating them, it's usually not the best choice because Cucumber, like it's kind of extra layer in your test automation framework, and you need to maintain it. You need to spend time on it. So, like I would say, framework with Cucumber like requires maybe 20% more time comparing to the same framework without Cucumber, just to create tests, support them. Yeah, I don't have some statistics to prove that. It's just my feeling, but like yeah, it highly depends on, do you have people who are interested in designing tests, like yeah, and on you don't have, and usually like you don't have such necessity. You don't have such people who like uh, like yeah, basically managers who like usually asks to introduce BDD or this Cucumber. They usually interested not in designing tests by themselves, but actually in good test reports where they can see and understand what's going on in the test. And like you can achieve a good test report without Cucumber. Yes, so you can like organize your test framework so that you have excellent and clear test report without Cucumber. Yeah. So yeah, that's the main criteria.
Right. Since you mentioned test reports, I mean, apart from Cucumber itself, we have other tools for reporting, right? Once our execution is completed. How do you decide which reporting tool to use?
Mhm. Um, I would say it's like depends on firstly project size and budget. Yeah, so if you have some kind of big project where you expect to have maybe like more than 200 tests, like approximately, I would suggest focus on report portal. Report portal, it's like a reporting tool that deployed as container, Docker container, and you can, it's kind of like, to simplify, it's a website where you like 24 hours per day, you can open it and see your execution results, like for today, for yesterday, for like 10 days before. Yeah, so it like kind of keeps history of executions. Also, it provides built-in functionality to analyze test failures. You can, see your failures and set like, okay, this failure due to bug, this failure due to automation test issue itself, like, right? And also it has kind of advanced features like automatic failure analysis, like using AI technologies. Yeah. So it's cool. Yeah, but the disadvantage is that you need to deploy it somewhere, so you have to spend money on, have to buy or use some EC2 or another instance, to deploy it there. So for the smaller project, it will be overhead, and you can use some more simple solutions, like for example, Lure reports. It also supports history a bit. I would say it's not so good as a report portal, but still you can see the execution history, especially if you're using, for example, Jenkins that has like plugin for Lure. Yeah. Oh well, so that's it. Yeah, it's also extend report. I do have experience with this, but not so big.
Okay, that's good to know. Um, Let me just see. So apart from building the framework, you also automate test
Mhm.
cases, like individual test cases. Is that correct?
Correct.
Sorry. Okay.
Yes.
So how do you ensure that your scripts are maintainable and scalable?
Mm, that's kind of abstract question. Can you maybe rephrase it? What exactly you mean by this?
Like what is your approach so that you can avoid brittle tests or tests that needs a lot of maintenance?
Mhm. Oh, yeah, I think I got your point. So, well, you have to create your test framework in a way that you kind of do not copy paste your code and you reuse it as much as possible. Yeah. So usually the main approaches to achieve that is kind of using page object pattern for automation, where you, for example, keep your locators in one place. So, for example, if a login page locators has changed, you just go to one place, change it there, and automatically all the tests, are fixed. Yeah. Yeah. So also, like it makes sense to use data-driven approach. Like for example, you have um, some requirement like where you need to use some test design techniques like class equivalence partition, like, yeah, this stuff. So where you, like for example, you have some input field on UI like with where you need to set like say, 16 and you have different requirements like based on like what you should have. Yeah, so it's good to kind of organize a data-driven test where your code for this test will be exactly the same, but the input data will be passed externally. So file like in another framework, or
Um,
just simply
Sorry,
like in test.ng. Yeah, so
I kind of lost you in the last few like 20 seconds. So
mhm.
can you repeat that?
Yeah, I was described that data-driven approach is that it can be achieved different way in Cucumber, test.ng, and other frameworks. But overall, it's good practice to use data-driven approach where you put your test data apart from your test scenario. Yeah, and you can run your test scenario with different test data if needed. Yeah.
All right. So I just need to ask, what is your preferred testing tool?
Testing tool, you mean test automation framework or what? It's
Yeah,
kind of
framework.
abstract.
Yeah, framework or tool, or like, do you
I would say
have you as have you used Selenium or
yeah,
HPQTP?
sure, I used Selenium, but like if you ask about like my preference, I would say Playwright. It's
Playwright.
like kind of new to the market, maybe 2 years or something else old, but it's like I see it's kind of next market leader in few years. So I think it will replace Selenium quite soon.
Okay, got it. So let me just check your CV. You had this experience where, let me just, okay, you develop a custom automation tool that allows you to execute tests, see
Mhm.
reports. Can you tell us more about this experience?
Yes, it was like really challenging and interesting experience for me. So uh, it was a project where customer did have kind of pipeline that was really complicated. So that this pipeline took uh, kind of sources from different like it took data from different sources. Like it actually was um, news website that it was imported some different news from different resources, like using kind of feeds. And so the problem like is that like these formats, external formats, they could be different. And this pipeline, it was parsed this news feed, and the output was like XML in known format, so that it kind of analyzed different sources, and the output was always like the same. And this pipeline was really complicated, and it took them a lot of time to test it manually, and it was really time consuming because like it's not easy to analyze XML files. Yeah, so it's difficult for people to work with such kind of tests. But another problem was that they didn't have enough resources, I mean, money, budget to properly organize test automation so that, to focus on different scenarios, on different like conditions. Yeah, so they wanted something maybe not ideal, but cheap, quick, and that could highlight them that something goes wrong. So to achieve that, we decided, like I decided to kind of create a tool that, well, so the purpose was that like they can, for example, select some files, like simulating this external feed from other resources, so that they upload these files to this tool. A tool will upload these files to pipeline, and pipeline will be executed. Tool will take the output XML file, like the pipeline generates here, and it will analyze how it differs from the golden one. A golden one it means that like was done like maybe day ago, week ago, right? So let me explain. I understand it's difficult to explain. So the idea was to, like, for example, they deployed new version of this pipeline, yeah, and uh, uh, they like upload the same files as yesterday, and they expect to have the same output as yesterday, yeah. And so my tool was actually comparing like what was produced today with what was produced yesterday, and provided kind of percentage of difference. So like for example that well today and yesterday it's kind of 99% equal or 95% equal. Yeah. So and for example, if they less than 95% equal, like the customer told that it means that well something may be broken with pipeline. So it's kind of was quick win. Yes, so that you don't spend a lot of money on full test automation, but still you have some kind of alert that something probably goes wrong with your pipeline. Yeah, and this tool was written in Java. It did have its own front end. It was deployed like to some server, so that allowed so the manual QA they didn't they didn't want to use kind of scripts or coding. Yes, so they just use this tool to manually upload files and manually see the results. So I understand it's difficult to explain, but yeah, it was kind of interesting, really, and results were impressive.
Yeah, it is interesting. That's why I asked, because it sounds different from the usual um, task for automation testers, right? This
Yes,
sounds like an actual application for an end user.
yeah, it was actually there I was assigned, to the project as not automation QA, but like software developer and test. So it's like in my company, it's a guy who have expertise in development, testing, and DevOps. So I do have like obviously my primary skill is automation testing, but I do have some experience with development and DevOps as well. So and this assignment was related to all of this stuff. So yeah, it was interesting and challenging.
Okay, got it. So, um, can you describe your experience, even in other projects, with continuous integration tools like Jenkins?
Mhm.
Like, how do you
Yeah.
integrate your automation test in the pipeline?
Okay. Do you want to hear some high level description, or maybe like how exactly to achieve that with Jenkins? What do you expect?
Yeah, high level would be good, but
High
if you
level.
can provide
Mhm.
more details, that would be appreciated
Mhm.
as well.
Okay, so on high level, like CI/CD pipeline, for sure it's like different on different projects and will be completely different depending on your architecture. Like for example, do you have monolith application or microservices? It will be completely different stories. But overall, like whenever a developer makes a commit, or attempts to push this code to main branch, ideally at this point of time, your CI/CD pipeline should start so that you already have some quality gates established. By quality gates, I mean some kind of checks, quality checks like unit tests, integration tests, some static code analysis like Sonar, for example. Yeah. Like so it could be kind of immediately done after pull request is created. And then, for example, developer like passed this quality gates, code merged to the branch, like some deployment starts automatically, for example, to your test environment. Yeah, so once deployment finished, you can organize to automatically run your maybe smoke automation suite, like maybe full regression suite, maybe like again, it very depends on your project. So yeah, and for example, in ideal CI/CD pipeline, you will have even a next step. So, for example, if your all tests passed on test environment, you automatically have like build promoted to next environment, like maybe pre-production or like even production, but I never faced that. So again, in ideal world, it's kind of pipeline when developer makes a commit and in 20 minutes it's commit on production, but it was already tested by different tests. Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of ideal world. I heard that Amazon like has some, Netflix has something like that, but like, personally I never seen like that. Yeah. So go into low-level details, like with Jenkins, it can be done like, for example, using Git hooks. So like you can organize your job to like receive hooks from Git hub, like whenever like some event happened, like merge or pull request or whatever. Yeah, also you can create a pipeline. So nowadays the best approach is to use it's kind of not manually create Jenkins job. It's still possible, but the best approach is to create pipeline as a file, yeah, and that also store it in the Git. And in Jenkins, you just point Jenkins to your Git where this pipeline file is placed, and Jenkins executes this pipeline. Pipeline contains from different stages or steps. Like I mentioned before, it can be deployment, can be running tests. Yeah. So again, if you talk about how to run tests with Java stack and Selenium, for example, it usually some Maven command that you execute from Jenkins pipeline and that starts your tests. Yeah. So it's again quite high level, but considering we already have not so much time, yeah, I think. But if you have more detailed questions, feel free to ask. I can describe in more detail.
Actually, uh, I have a lot of questions, but we're kind of running out of time. So let me just ask a few simple questions. Um,
Mhm.
so if, for example, in your reports, a few of the test scripts fail, how do you approach the investigation to it, or how do you review your test results?
Mhm. Well, as I mentioned before, if you're using the reporting portal, for example, this kind of advanced reporting tool, it allows you to group these tests like almost automatically. Like you can, see, for example, that your test failed due to same fail reason, like the same like exception. Yeah. So it may help you to quickly analyze like what is going on there. But yeah, usually it's not the case. Usually you don't have report portal and you can achieve like doing it one by one. So usually to understand why your test has failed, you should analyze logs. Ideally, you organize it as framework that you have like good login, so that if test fails, you understand what was going on there, why it was failed. Like also you probably attach some screenshots or even video recordings, and you can just see it and try to understand what was going wrong there. Like of course, if nothing helps, you can rerun test locally and check what's going on there.
Yeah. Actually, we have less than a minute, so this recording might end in a few seconds, and I can
Mhm.
send you another link just for the feedback. Is that okay?
Yes, that's okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause the recording.